Joining us now, Lee Spieckerman. This guy knows a little bit about media. He was on Newt Gingrich's team in the 2012 cycle. Of course, you remember that. We were the last Newt Gingrich holdout in America, and we were like the Alamo here on the John Fredericks Show before his campaign went down the tubes to the empty suit Mitt Romney. He's also, just as an aside, he's the father of high-definition sports. And so, if you ever see that basketball just going in the basket or the stitches on a baseball, then you can thank Lee Spieckerman for that. And he's with us now to talk about these polls. Lee, welcome.
Good morning, John. Great to be with you.
Now, Lee, I get up today, I go to the Washington Post. And, of course, big article that they did this survey. And don't worry about the national polls. Clinton's ahead in every battleground state poll. They say she's ahead in Texas. She's going to win Mississippi, Georgia, North Carolina, Louisiana, Florida, Ohio. Maybe Trump can win Alaska. Meantime, you get every poll now coming out. The CNN poll came out today showing Trump with a 2-point lead. This is CNN, right? This is not exactly a poll that is weighted in favor of the Republican candidates. Yet it gets no press. Why?
Well, it just broke, the CNN poll, but that is huge news. Just a month ago, Trump was down 8 or 9 points in that CNN poll.
11.
And to be up 1 or 2, whether it's a four-way or two-way race, is a dramatic shift. And CNN, I've been observing, watching what they've been doing. They're giving it pretty good play. We'll see what Today and Good Morning America and CBS Morning News do later in the evening. Network news shows to do tonight. But to not acknowledge that as a dramatic turnaround for Donald Trump is just disingenuous. If you look at if you go to Real Clear Politics and you look at the three most recent polls, the ones that go into September, that are likely voter polls, we now have a tie race nationally. That's an average of 3 polls. That's CNN, LA Times, and Investors Business Daily. Likely voter polls, it is now a tie race nationally. And when you talk about the battleground states, that's very misleading because the state polls always lag the national polls. Why is that? Well, because the battleground state polls are done more sporadically than the national polls. Just use your head. Obviously, if Donald Trump is pulled ahead in a big national poll, and we know Hillary is way ahead in the two of the three most popular states, California and New York State, there's no way you can garner a lead in a national poll without pulling ahead or doing much better in those key battleground states. Now, let's take a look at right there in Virginia. A big poll just broke of the cycle, and that shows that Trump is only 1 point behind, so basically statistically tied there in Virginia. And as you well know, and I'm sure you frequently cover, all the polls have been showing a yawning gap between Clinton and Trump, with Clinton ahead in Virginia. And now we've got a 1 point, really statistically a tied race, even in Virginia, and that's with Kane on the ticket.
Well, this is, and let me just interrupt you there because you're definitely onto something, Mr. Spieckerman, because this is the second poll now in Virginia that's come out showing this race within 1, because we had a Hampton University poll that came out late last week,
right,
which everybody had on, said, that's just an outlier. It's not real. Clinton's up by 12, 15, 18, 20, whatever the number is, right? So they immediately discounted that. Everybody had on my show that was on the Clinton side threw it out, okay? Now you get, on Saturday, the Emerson poll comes out showing it's down by 1. So
right, in 1 week. In one week in Virginia, with those two polls, you've literally more than half of Clinton's lead has been erased, even if you average all the polls, just because of those two recent polls. So it's a dramatic turnaround in Virginia, and again, as we saw this morning, a dramatic turnaround nationally in favor of Trump.
Okay, so tell us what this all means. Because every time we get a Democrat on our show that is of a serious nature, Lee Spieckerman, they tell us, look, John, at the end of the day, your math just doesn't work. The Electoral College favors Clinton. No matter what happens, it's almost fait accompli. She's going to win. I get back with the argument and I say, look, all Trump has to do is win the Romney states. The only one that's really close is North Carolina, in my judgment. And then he's got to win Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Florida, and he's president. And he's ahead in Florida. He's tied in Ohio, and he's within 5 or 6 in Pennsylvania. How is my logic flawed?
Your logic is spot on, and I'll throw in 2 other states there. Look at Iowa, which Obama carried both times. Now we have Donald Trump with a meaningful lead there, several points in Iowa, and that's been pretty robust. And now in Wisconsin, it's very low single digits. I think it's 4 or 5 points, even in Wisconsin, and the trajectory is in favor of Donald Trump even there. So I agree with your analysis on that, and I think what we're looking at, frankly, John, I think is what I would call a reverse of the Romney-Fox News phenomenon back in 2012, and that is Fox News, which I appear on, and on Fox Business, and think the world of. It's a great network. But there were a lot of pollsters and analysts appearing on Fox News conveying the impression that basically President Obama couldn't be reelected and Romney had this thing won. And there was, not everybody was saying that, but some very well-respected people kept saying, if anything, the polls overstate Obama's strength, and Romney's going to win this thing. And I think you had a lot of Fox News viewers that believed that Romney was going to win. I think we now have that with the establishment media in reverse, and this time it's with Hillary Clinton. They just cannot get their head around the idea that Hillary Clinton is going to lose this thing to Donald Trump. Part of that is wishful thinking, and you could argue that with some of the people that appeared on Fox in 2012, wishful thinking, denial. And part of it was after the Democratic convention and appeared to get in the polling, you began to have this narrative that basically we have a Barry Goldwater, Lyndon Johnson situation. Trump really can't win, kind of what you were saying that a lot of your Democratic guests are propounding on your program. And so it's kind of okay. Now it's okay to kind of be unfair. Now we really don't have to go out of our way to be fair and objective with Donald Trump. I really think that kind of mentality, unfortunately, was taking hold and has still got a grip on a lot of, and now this CNN poll this morning completely obliterates that mindset. That's pretty dramatic.
I mean, that's got to be a shocker for a lot of these people on the Democratic side that I believe now are delusional. I mean, I was telling my audience earlier, Lee Spieckerman, that the last several Democrat events that I've been at, I definitely sense a trepidation. I mean, they're saying the right things, but I know that deep in their soul, they know that this lead that Clinton has is slipping away, and they know they're going to lose because they don't know what else is out there. I mean, that's the other problem. The other thing is these debates, a couple months ago, I was saying that, Trump really had to win decisively these 3 debates. Now, there's another school of thought that says all he has to do is hold his own. That doesn't have to be this knockout blow. He just has to do very, very well, and then he wins. Because I think people are moving in his direction. Lee, go back to the Electoral College, just so our audience knows. I mean, it's true. There's not a lot of pathways to victory for Trump in reality. But if he doesn't win Pennsylvania, and he wins Florida and Ohio, which I think he will, then in order to be president, he has to win Virginia and Iowa. He would get 271, and he would beat Clinton 271 to 269. So there's not a lot of pathways, or he could win Virginia and then win Nevada. Both of them are sick. There's not a lot of pathways because is he going to win Wisconsin?
Well, throw Iowa in there. Throw in maybe one elector in Maine, which allocates by congressional district, and Trump is doing very well in Maine. I think New Hampshire, even though some of the polls show a gap, I think by no means is out of reach. And Wisconsin is really closing in favor of Trump. So I think there are more pathways than people believe, and I think, as you'll also agree, John, and the folks that are being intellectually honest in the poll, that there is no way that Trump can be even with Hillary nationally. It gets back to kind of what I was saying earlier about the state polls, but it also applies to the Electoral College. There's no way that Trump can be in that position nationally, and for the key the swing states not to fall in line in his favor. Again, we got to remember. You mentioned Texas. Obviously, in California and New York, the other two of the three most populous states, Hillary's probably going to have a significant margin. So it's impossible for us to have even a tie in the national polling or in the popular vote, and for Trump not to do well in these states that are now on the bubble. So I think that's overplayed. I think every smart pollster will tell you that basically you need. My personal theory is, and I don't claim to be a pollster, I'm not a statistician, but I've dealt with polling and that kind of research for many years. I believe in this election that if on the eve of the election Donald Trump is within 3 points in the national polling, on the average of the national polling of likely voters, he's going to win this election. Even Celinda Lake, who's an esteemed Democratic pollster, admitted in an article in the past week or so that she sees a hidden Trump vote out there. Now, is it 5 points? No, but I think it could very well be 1 point, and that's significant. Your margin of error in these polls, I have to believe, which is 2 to 3 points, is if anything, is understating the Trump vote. I don't think there's any reason to believe it's overstating it. If you look at the latest Emerson poll, the voters, and this latest CNN poll, the voters that are supporting Trump are more solidified in their choice than those supporting Clinton. In both that latest national poll, CNN, and that Emerson poll, there's more strength and more robustness among those that are for Trump than for Clinton, which is very important. And if Trump manages to pull ahead by 1 or 2 points in the national polls before the election, all this talk about turn out the vote, digital, all that stuff is way overplayed, because that national support will completely sweep those tactical issues. Because I think we are dealing, I don't think it's an exaggeration. I think you've said it on your show over the past few months. This really is a movement. This is a very strong movement. And basically what we've seen over the past 2 weeks is that Donald Trump has not given voters and those that are not decided a reason not to vote for him. We've had a lot of reasons not to vote for Hillary Clinton, certainly a lot of reasons not to be enthusiastic about voting for her and turning out. But Trump hasn't turned people off. He's done a lot of terrific things, made some great speeches, made an aggressive push for African-American votes, which is genuine, which, frankly, in my view, is not just to gain African-American votes, not just to show that he's not a racist, but I really think that Donald Trump is thinking ahead to governing. We want to get past this idea of tribes and division in this country. We want people unified. Mm-hmm. We don't want this kind of polarization that Bush was president and when President Obama was president. In both cases, we had candidates that talked about unity. I think were well-meaning. I think they meant it. They didn't execute on it, either one of them, very well. Mm-hmm. And we ended up with increasing polarization. I think Donald Trump is going in exactly the opposite direction, in a much more hopeful direction, which is, we're all in this thing together. And I'm not afraid to say that now. I'm not afraid to talk to everybody now. I'm not going to wait until after the election, because now is the time to build the groundswell that we need to make the major changes that have to be made to turn this country around.
All right, Lee Spieckerman, we're out of time. I want to thank you for being here on the John Fredericks Show. I agree with your analysis. Trump is going to win, and it's interesting. I'm going to comment on it when I get back. This is John Fredericks Radio Network.